Hello there, Chris from preussenstudios with you this evening. We're going to be finishing up this sheet that we started last week, hopefully to make it look like this, with a few little minor differences, like the back will be riveted instead of sewn on there, and of course the colors will be a little bit different. But we've heated up our wax, so now we'll be able to sit there and show you exactly how we go about clipping it, gluing it, getting the stitch line straight and everything. So looks like it's going to be a fun evening. Okay, I'm going to move the camera down to give you a good view of the workstation. Should have a pretty good view there. Okay, we've already got our stitch line in place all the way along the edge, so everyone can see inside there. You can run a separate stitch line if you really want to, but the back is not as important as the front. As you can see, I've already put my seal on it. You have to do that because of the way that the sheath sits there. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to get it once it's all completed. Whew. All right, what you're looking at here is hot wax coming in. Okay, this is going to be a layer of wax. I'm going to go right over the rivet hole. I'm going to coat the inside of this really good. I'm going to coat the inside of this, and I'm going to coat this area right here. What this will allow it to do is, for the life of this sheath, it'll act as a lubricant which will actually soak into the leather. And what'll happen is, as whoever is wearing this is working outside, the heat will melt the wax into the leather and actually cause it to become more pliable. Well, that's a good thing. It's also going to help to form the sheath, to help it make a good form around the knife in the future. So as you can see, it does not stain through and it does not affect the rest of it. You can't see it anywhere in there, which is a good thing. So what we're going to do now is take some binder clips. These are binder clips and some glue, and we're actually going to glue the edge of this thing shut. So what you do with the glue is you sit there and you come across here, give it a good bead of glue. This is some incredible glue. This is leather cement. That leather cement works like a champ. It does dry fast, so what you want to kind of do is spread it around a little bit. If you don't do this, when you push it closed, the glue will go everywhere sometimes. You get a little bit extra, run it on this other side. When you get it in position, when the leather touches the leather, it will become adhered to it. It's actually really, really good glue, so you want to make sure that you line it up straight. Then you take these binder clips, and they help hold it together while it dries. The drying time for leather glue is really incredibly fast. Probably less than about 5 minutes. Super glues, all the other types of glues, epoxy resins, they work on it, but not as fast as this glue. For some reason, this glue is able to sit there and really, really take hold very fast. While that's setting and drying, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of the other tools that we use. This right here is a hole punch. It's a multi-hole punch. It punches 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes at one time. Now these are rather used tools, so I have to keep them sharpened. You know, I'll do is run a little bit of an edge on it so that it'll penetrate the leather a little bit easier. Should be nice and sharp like a razor. Try to give it even wear. And then this here is a single punch. That's for punching one hole. And that will become important here in just a few minutes as well. You could use your standard hole punch, which looks like this, to punch the holes in it, but keep in mind that you're going to be punching round holes in there. And even the smallest setting is big enough to get a rivet to go through. It'll also leave a lot of play for the future stitches that go into it. And that's one thing you definitely don't want to do. So you can see as we've been talking here, that glue has set. It really doesn't take it a long time for it to adhere to there. So what we're going to do, since it's in there pretty good now, we're going to punch a few holes in it. And what I've got here is I've got a way of offsetting the sheath a little bit. There's 2 layers of leather a lower layer and an upper layer. And that's so that this doesn't go all the way through and hit my steel on the back. So what we're going to do is line this up along the edge, as you can see. Here's my stitch line. We're going to line this up right here along the edge. We're going to give it a little bit of play right here. Just a little bit, and I'll explain why we're doing that. The one thing you have to be careful of when you're doing this is to make sure that the chisel parts of it go straight down. If you have it in an angle like this, it'll pop out the side. If you have it in an angle like this, it'll go straight to the back. It'll turn. So you want to make sure you get it as straight as you can. Usually about 8. Sometimes it takes a little bit more. That one took about 12. And then you want to hold down on one side of it and rock it. This is so you don't lose your glue. And as you can see, it's put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes. And so what we're going to do is follow right down with that pattern. Where you're going to run into that straight one is whenever it starts to curve, just like it does here. Now you see, if I ran the 6 stitch, if I actually looked at the spacing, it would actually be outside of the curve of this. So what I have to do is I have to go back one hole, and then it lines up again. So that keeps me in line, and it helps out the sheath. As you can see, it went through the back. That's what we're looking for, is good even keel right in line with the other ones. Okay, so pulling this out the same way, we're going to rock it back and forth. It's going to be a good stitch line. And this is where your single one comes in. And the same rule applies to the single hole punch. You have to sit there and line it up just like so. And when you punch one hole, you go straight down with it. Usually takes about 4 taps for that one. Doesn't take much at all. So we're going to make this curve. They make smaller punches, and I've got a set of those. In fact, I've got a set of 3 punch, as you can see right here. It's like a small chisel set. I guess we can show that for our viewers this evening. It's got like a whole different set of different shapes and sizes in there. The one we're looking at is the Broad 3. And what this thing does is it screws directly onto the stand, onto the post. Once you get it on there, tighten it down really good, and then you can punch 3 holes at a time, just like this. Be sure and keep it straight. You want to check the bottom. Make sure you have a place where the chisels have exited the leather, and then take it off in the same rocking fashion, the same rocking manner that we did before. Okay, now the stitch holes are in this sheath, and they're uniform throughout the sheath, so that our when we start to thread through, it's actually going to look really good. Put that tool back up. And just like I said earlier, what we're going to do, the reason we left a little bit of space is I'm going to come in here and we'll put me a rivet right straight there, right straight across the front. That is going to keep the knife that goes in and out of this for 20 years. It's going to keep it tight. It's going to keep it in there. It's going to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. Because remember, I build sheaths for use. I don't build sheaths for decorator pieces, except by very special request. So, we're going to run the rivet through the back of there. I'm going to flip it over and clip it on the front. And then I'm going to take this special little tool that I have. It's a piece of steel. We're going to slide it up behind there. And what that's going to do is provide my resistance, because otherwise I would have to fight with the belt sheath in the back of it. I'd have to really fight with that thing just to keep it straight. So we're going to take the dimpled end, Put it on the top of this, give it about 4 to 6. Make sure that that rivet is set. Best way to test a rivet is take your nail, scratch it, scratch the back, and stick your finger in there, and twist. If it doesn't pop out, it's set. You want to take this opportunity to kind of smooth off the edges of your sheath in case there's any overlay. It's not going anywhere because it's glued in place already. And this is where you get your balance. And basically what I'm doing, you see how that's over the edge just a little bit? I want it to look flush and straight where it gives a nice professional edge. So what I'm doing is I'm trimming away the excess, trimming away the little bitty edge. Runs right along here. Now to give it an even more professional look, I'm going to use what they call a sanding block, which is sandpaper attached to a foam rubber pad. It's soft. What that does is it allows it to flex. When it flexes, that helps the leather to make a nice edge. Sand it down a little bit. Give it a real good edge. Sand down there along the bottom. And as you can see, it balances it up pretty good. Okay, next thing we're going to do is run some thread through there. And for this particular project, I think we're going to use a rather, not a fine thread, but we're going to use a waxed thread. We buy this thread by the spool, along with the needles, because we go through so many of them per year. It's actually quite a few of them that we go through. Needles have a tendency to break every so often. We do have a stitching machine, but that is for rapidly made products. It's for things that we're going to make in a hurry. And it actually is really good. Okay, so I'm going to tie my knot in here. I'll bring it over. Like all my sheaths, I try to put 2 knots in there so that it can hold it really well, and then trim the excess. Now, you don't really want threads or knots, at least the knot part of it, to show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take advantage of that little opening. I'm going to go to the back of the sheath and poke it through. When I pull it through, the first thread is going to go in there. What I'm going to do is just go over and under, over and under, over and under the whole sheath all the way up. Now if you ever have any of these that are really, really difficult to poke through, you can use a tool called an awl. Some people have the stitcher there, but I find it a lot faster just to do it this way. I mean, you can really make it move quick. I can knock out about maybe 10 to 15 of these sheaths a night just doing it by hand. With the machine, I can knock out 20, maybe 30 of them. Really, really quick. So this is a single stitch that's going in here right now. This is equivalent to the way that your shirt is stitched or stitches are run on a hem. A single stitch basically means that you've run 1 stitch line. And you can tell I'm giving it a little bit of a tug at the end. This waxed thread is incredibly hard. So I pull, that's a single stitch. Now I'm already through the first one, so what I'm going to do is go back through the same hole, 1 below it, and then back through the same hole again. What that's going to do is provide extra strength for that sheath. Now we're going to go in the holes that we didn't earlier. We're going to thread it back through. Some of these will be a little tough, and if they are, you can use pliers on them. The needle nose pliers probably work the best, but you can use pretty much any pliers that you need to, and not really a bad thing. So we're running the stitch line down. Give you a close look. Usually there'll always be a little hole at the bottom of my sheaths, unless I seal them up, a weep hole. That way, in case any moisture or anything like that gets into the sheath while you're out there working, it has a way of draining out. Okay, so we're getting here to the end. It's getting really, really tight. I'm bringing it in. I'll go back one more. Remember, this is the front of our sheath, and we don't want any knots showing on the front of our sheath. So we're going to go to the back. I'm going to bring it through. Okay? We're going to find the closest thread and push it through. If you're incapable of pushing it through, you can always get the awl, like I mentioned earlier, and that awl will sit there and will do the job. You want to bring up your stitch really good. Divide your threads. Give it a good pull. And it locks your stitch in place. Give it a good pull. Trim the excess. Push your knot down into it. Okay, the next step, we're going to take a dowel. This one's a pretty good size wooden dowel. Okay? And we're going to use simple water to actually form this. I'm going to dip the sheath in water. Let it drain out for a second. We're going to take this dowel and we're going to push it into there. That dowel is going to form where the knife is going to sit, just like so. If you wanted to ensure that you're forming it for a belt, you could take a stick or a pipe or some other flat type of device and put it in the back there, and that'll act as a belt loop. And we're going to set this out to dry. When we come back next time, we'll be finishing it out, staining it, and painting it, getting it ready for the final steps. I appreciate y'all joining me this evening. Y'all have a great night.